Hey, I wanted to make a response video to the live stream you had tonight with Eco. I wanted to share my thoughts because I think I can share them in a much more succinct way. So here we go. How do you falsify the fake death? Well, you demonstrate the ballpark, necklace, and pendant behavior using a bullet. That's what you do. Go up to the range, get a dummy that simulates skin well enough, and show me that the pendant flies up into the neck and that the shirt puffs out like this and the back of the shirt puffs out. Doesn't have to be perfect, just needs to be the ballpark. That's how you falsify fake death. If you can do that, I'm wrong. Ball's now in your court. What evidence do we have that it was faked? Well, we have some behavioral cues here. We have odd signs of coordination and expectation immediately before the shot. The audio guy does like something like this. Boom. He like goes down like something like this. Boom. We have Dan Flood sitting like this, then goes boom, boom, boom immediately before. Both of those things happen immediately before. Only one other example of Dan Flood doing this. One other example right after Charlie's talking about call signs. One other example right after Charlie's talking about call signs. Get this off my chest so it's not making noise. So we have evidence of coordination. We also have the other ones talking about the glasses. Looking at this guy, glasses. That guy then nods to the other guy. Then that guy nods to the other guy. And we're all doing all this kind of stuff. Maybe not, but it looks like coordination to me. And it's all happening immediately before the shot, in like the 10 seconds before the shot. So it looks pretty suspicious to me. It looks like coordination. It's not evidence that proves coordination, but it looks like coordination to me. So we also have odd lack of surprise immediately after the shot. We have Mikey McCoy, who does this apparently to cover his ears, and he immediately just walks away. He just walks away. He's not running away. He's not cowering. He just walks away. Immediately after the shot, boom, hands up, walks away. So that's an odd lack of surprise immediately after the shot. We also have certainty of death despite evidence of death. Terrell Farnsworth, he glances at Charlie for like a split second and then he runs away and he makes a FaceTime, a selfie video saying that Charlie is definitely dead. Looked at Charlie for like 0.2 seconds basically, and he's already saying he's dead. Okay. We also have some coordination of a van door. 10 seconds before the van door opens, the van in the tunnel, boom, van door immediately shuts. So that's evidence of coordination. That's behavioral evidence of coordination, evidence of behavior that we would not expect to see if this were not controlled in any way or planned by in any way the people behind and around Charlie. It's not conclusive, but it is contextual evidence that makes it seem like there's more to the story here. We also have audio evidence, crack thump audio analysis that has the bullet entering the van, not Charlie Kirk. When you compare the expected or mathematically predicted delta T's between the sonic crack arrival and the thump arrival, we can make guesses as to where the bullet would have started and the path it would have taken. We can mathematically simulate the Mach cone, and we can guess as to what the bullet speed would have been, and then we can see whether or not the actual measured delta T's between when the crack arrives and when the muzzle blast arrives, we can compare our prediction, our predicted mathematically simulated values against the measured values. And if we have software like the software I wrote that can allow us to test thousands of hypotheses per second, then we can sort of narrow in on what the rifle speed would have been, or what the bullet speed would have been, and what the orientation would have been. And that analysis consistently has it going into the van, not into Charlie Kirk. But it is coming from LOSI, and it's about like 2490 feet per second. Gives us the lowest error rate between the mathematically calculated values and the simulated and the actual measured values. So that has it going into the van. That again, 10 seconds before van door opens, boom, immediately shuts. And that software that I use, the map that I use, there's 3 different versions of it now, and it has been verified using a test case where we went out, or someone else went out into a field, Unzapped did, and he gave me some data where we know the position of the rifle and the orientation of the rifle, and the software works. We also have visual evidence of faked death. We have coagulated blood coming out of this hole here, and coagulated blood cannot come from a living body. That would have had to have come from a blood pack. We also have decorticate posturing, this posturing here immediately after the shot, but at the same time, immediately afterwards, the decorticate posturing is not maintained. You would expect that to be maintained for the duration of the next hours at least, but it immediately collapses. We would not expect to see that if the person was still living, if the brain still had control. We would expect to see that maintained rigidly for a long time. We wouldn't expect to see that immediately relapse. And we also have shirt behavior indicating a grounded source of expanded vapor, or expanding vapor pushing the cross up. We know that it's not vapor coming out of the cross because you would expect to see exhaust coming down. It would have to push stuff out to go forward, but we don't see that. We see the exhaust going upwards with the direction of the pendant's travel, which tells us that there's something anchored to the body in some way down here, pushing both the vapor and the pendant upwards. So that is evidence of faked death because it strongly implies that Charlie was wearing some type of device down here that would have been responsible for that. And it's hard to imagine how that would have been a weapon that was intended to hurt him if he was wearing it intentionally. The necklace remains on the back of the neck late into the event, despite claims of cavitation. If the neck expanded, you would expect to see the necklace no longer resting on the back of the neck within the first frame, because cavitation takes like 8 milliseconds. So you would expect the back of the necklace to break, and you would expect to see radial expansion of the necklace, but we just don't see that. When we're like 16 or 34 or 48 or something milliseconds into the event, the back of the necklace remains undisturbed, apparently, on the back of the neck, and we just would not expect to see that with cavitation. Both field tests of cavitation have the necklace breaking in the back and flying forward or radially. My Blender simulations, my physics simulations, repeat that as well. It breaks in the back and flies forward this way. But what we see on Charlie Kirk is it starts at under the D for freedom. That is the origin, the center of shirt deformation, and it comes up, and we have air pressure causing an arc of the freedom text, and the pendant appears to strike right where the neck wound is, and the necklace goes up and back, not radially out from the center of the neck. So this is a very different event that we're observing on Charlie Kirk. It's not cavitation. Cavitation would have, there's no part of the body down here that can cavitate in order to push the entirety of the necklace up and back. Cavitation is a radial expansion about this center that acts on the necklace that way. That is not what we observe, so it is not cavitation. Extensive evidence of a bulge on the stomach is anomalous. We have every photo that shows his stomach, pretty much, and every video has a very clear bulge on his stomach right about right here. That is not just belly fat. There's some type of device down there. It could be a medical device. That's possible, but it's anomalous. We also have ongoing manual motions of Kirk's body well after the shot, not explained by others. There are some parts where it, like when his arm does this motion, yeah, that's because someone's moving his arm. But there's other parts where his wrist flips up like this, where his fingers are extended where they shouldn't be, where it appears as though his head is moving independently, and where his elbow moves independently of anyone else. It's crummy footage. It's not, no single one is 100% definitive, but in the totality, it definitely seems like it's hard to say that this dude is dead when all these little movements are happening. We have the fingers moving, the wrist moving, the elbow moving. It looks like that's voluntary. Okay, so that's the visual evidence. And then the contextual evidence is the widow Erica. She posts a video of herself weeping and mourning over a body claimed to be Charlie Kirk, but it isn't, because we have a photo of Charlie's hand in life directly up against Erica's hand, and it's like his hand is almost twice the size of Erica's, but this body in the coffin is the same size as Erica's, and this is not explained by depth. It's not explained by the lens, because in both instances, both hands are pretty much right up against each other. So we know it's not Charlie in that coffin. I don't know how you explain, and it's not dehydration because that doesn't impact bones. In order to get that much shrinkage, you don't get that much shrinkage with bone with dehydration. That's not how dehydration works. So we don't know what on earth is in that casket, but it's not Charlie Kirk. So that's pretty odd. We also have no reports of burial. It could just be that it's private, but it's odd. Charlie Kirk is still named on the TPUSA board page. Doesn't necessarily mean anything, but it's odd. But what's more meaningful to me, but isn't necessarily evidence, is that we have all of the behavior of everyone around Charlie, except for his parents, notably. Their behavior just seems very off. That statement doesn't fly in trial, that's okay, but just intuitively to me and so many other people, their behavior doesn't seem right. That's relevant to an investigator, to a detective. Can you bring that into the courtroom? No, but it's relevant at this stage of an investigation because it informs you on where to look for the evidence that you can bring into court. So why the squib theory? Because it has explanatory power. It explains and demonstrates exactly why the back of the shirt puffs out, exactly why the front of the shirt puffs out. It explains exactly why he wore a Force Sun Defender shirt from Carhartt ordered through Graphic Goat as a sample order that was white. It also explains exactly why Mikey McCoy leaves so fast and so calmly. It explains exactly why there's so much coordination immediately before. It also explains exactly why the live streams reportedly blacked out for 15 seconds over the shot. It also explains exactly why there is a pouch of some kind on Charlie's belly. It also explains exactly why it looks like there's a seam on Charlie's lip right here. It also explains exactly why it looks like there's a belly prosthetic on his belly that is not just the pouch. It also explains exactly why the van door opens immediately before and closes immediately after the shot. Why can't it be the federal narrative? How do we disprove that? Is there any way, any single piece of evidence that conclusively rules out the federal narrative? There's one. The reason is because cavitation doesn't do that. It doesn't force the pennant up, starting under the D for freedom, up and back over the shoulders. It doesn't do that. Cavitation from a gunshot wound to the neck expands the neck out radially from the center of the neck, from the center of the bullet's path, in like 8 milliseconds. That does not explain why we have a center of shirt deformation down here. It just doesn't. It does not push the necklace in its totality upwards and back. It doesn't work. It's not cavitation. Radial versus linear force vector. It doesn't freaking work, man. That's how we know it's not the federal narrative. The shirt behavior is the smoking gun. You cannot reproduce it with a bullet. You just can't. But if you can, prove me wrong, I will go back. And I will most likely be wrong. If you can demonstrate that shirt behavior going the right direction and then the necklace movement starting down here under the D for freedom or somewhere around this area and forcing the entire necklace in one linear motion upwards and back over the shoulder, then I will almost certainly be wrong. But I don't think you can. And I don't think you should need an actual human body to do that with. I think you should be able to get into the ballpark, but you just can't because cavitation doesn't do that. Everything after that is contextual, though. The most important thing we have is the necklace behavior. You can always just say it was a different gun, or it's just super underpacked or water damaged or something to explain no exit wound. No exit wound gets a lot of people into the conspiracy theories, but is it conclusive evidence that the federal narrative is wrong? No, because you can always say, yeah, but. There's always some kind of edge case that can maybe explain it. We can't demonstrate it yet, but there's always an edge case that we can't factor in completely. So we can't rule it out just because there's no exit wound. But I really don't like appealing to the edge case as many times as you have to with the federal narrative. That really bugs me. But when the shirt behavior proves the device was under the shirt, and when demonstration shows that devices employed to reproduce what we observe are absolutely harmless and incapable of hardly even scratching the skin, we have to start asking some questions. So when I reproduce, so we have evidence that the only way I can reproduce and that anyone has been able to reproduce the shirt behavior that we observed, this stuff right here, is by placing a device under the shirt right here. Whether it's a hose going to something down strapped to the leg is what I've been testing, and it's harmless. I can reproduce basically the exact same behavior, but it doesn't scratch me. That's why I think Charlie's still alive. In science, we have to start with an observation, start with an anomaly, and we have to think about possible explanations for what might explain this anomaly. We come up with different hypotheses and we test those hypotheses. We don't start with a conclusion, the federal narrative, handed to us within 33 hours, and then ask, how do we disprove? No, you don't do that. That is merely a candidate explanation that hasn't even proved that it's a candidate explanation anymore. But the legal system says, here's your conclusion, here's our conclusion, prove us wrong. Well, I think you can, but I don't think that's scientific. That's not the best pathway to truth. The best pathway to truth is science, and in science you propose hypotheses, and those hypotheses become candidate explanations when you demonstrate that those hypotheses can actually reproduce what we see. If I can go out into a field and get a perfect squib and have people take high-resolution photos of my neck and reproduce the back of the shirt, the necklace behavior, and the front of the shirt, everything absolutely perfectly, does that prove fake death? No, it doesn't. What it does do, though, is it proves that faked death is a candidate explanation. Has the federal narrative done that yet? No. No one has come even remotely close to getting the shirt behavior, the back of the shirt behavior, actually what we see. They've done the cavitation tests where it breaks in the back and flies forward, and we have some jiggle going on here, but we don't have that. We just don't. So it's not a candidate explanation. It's not scientific. In order to explain the anomaly that we observe here, and the anomalies we observe here, the anomaly of the necklace flying upwards and back, we need to propose hypotheses, and we need to test those hypotheses and determine which hypotheses can actually explain the phenomenon. And fake death, I hate to say it, I know you don't like it, but fake death is the only one that is even close to becoming even a candidate hypothesis or candidate explanation. And if I do it, that doesn't mean that it was faked, because it only shows that it is a candidate. And that is just the bare minimum of even being taken seriously in science. And the next step is to find out if that's what actually happened. But first we need to find out what could have happened. Thanks for watching. Have a good night.